The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
And now, it's time for Radio Jobline with your host, Scott Possessor, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio.
Welcome, everybody. It must be Saturday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m., or it might be Wednesday night from 9 to 10 p.m. We're on twice a week to talk about your career, look at the job markets, look at the talent pools, look at the economy. We had our economist on the show last week, and I finally got him to admit that we're not having a recession, folks. So remember, you heard it here. If there's any doubt in your mind as to whether or not we're going to have a recession, the answer is no, we are not having a recession. I expect interest rates to start dropping in not the next quarter, but the quarter after that, maybe once. And then next year, they're talking about multiple interest rates. As long as inflation doesn't rear its ugly head and get a lot worse, I think we're going to be in a good stead for a good economic recovery from the malaise we've had over the last 4 years. One of the things we talk about a lot on Radio Jobline is leadership. And you guys know we talked to Jeff Oak, the Vistage chair from Vistage International. He comes to us with the CEO Confidence Index. We talk about what leaders do, how they do it, why they're so important, the difference between leaders and managers. And leadership has become one of the best topics that we do here on Radio Jobline. And to that end, I have recruited an old friend, somebody who, if you're a regular listener, you might even recognize the name Christopher Coopersmith, the author of The Magic of an Influencer series. A very interesting series. It's about leadership. And Chris has a different perspective. He looks at it historically from people like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and Alexander Hamilton, who were great leaders, obviously. And he applies some of what he's learned about them through his research and his investigation and writing his books into modern day leadership abilities. So welcome, Chris Coopersmith, to Radio Jobline.
Thank you, Scott. It's wonderful to be here, and it's great catching up with you.
Yeah, great catching up with you. And you look the same, too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
You're not aging, and that's not good. You got to age a little bit. Give me something.
Gotcha.
But you're still young.
Thank
I
you.
want to congratulate you on your fabulous child that you just had. I just saw a picture, a 6-month-old baby. Congratulations.
Yes. Yep.
And to you and your wife. And what is your wife's name again?
Chung Feng.
Okay. I congratulations to her.
Thank you.
To you, the whole Coopersmith family. And let's talk a little bit about leadership. So tell me about the genesis of how you even got involved in writing this book.
So the genesis originally started, now we're going back to about, we'll say 2015, 2016. Mm-hmm. I was a manager at a Fortune 500 company. And at the time, I didn't really have too many leadership examples, and I wanted to develop more and learn more. And I've always had a bit of a love for history. So I began to realize people like Abraham Lincoln had very strong leadership qualities, mm-hmm. and that leadership was really emphasizing their qualities and living them in your day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. So I began researching from there, and that's really how the book spanned, because it was a unique take on leadership.
Mm-hmm. All right, and we're going to talk about some of those guys and some of those people that you were your historical examples in a little bit too. Let's talk first of all, I always ask everybody this, the difference between leadership and management. They're not the same.
Not at all. Very different.
So tell us.
So my view on leadership is someone who has a vision, they exercise the vision, and most importantly, they have good qualities. And they're able to emphasize those qualities to the people around them. Mm-hmm. Management to me is like, you did your chores. Here's my homework. Here it is. I'm handing it in. Mm-hmm. And management is more of just something that needs to be done in some sense. If you work at a construction site, let's say, you need quality assurance. Or if you're a lawyer preparing legal documents, you need them to be reviewed for accuracy. Mm-hmm. But that's not leadership. That's just checking up.
Right.
And leadership is really something that I think is lacking a lot of times, and something that we need more of. If we had stronger leaders, you could propel things much further in life.
Right. And it would be great if every manager was a great leader.
Correct.
Right? Because then you'd be inspired.
Exactly.
And you'd pick up all these skills and stuff. But it doesn't necessarily work that way. There are good managers that aren't the greatest leaders.
Exactly. And one thing that the book helps with is it takes those people who are managers who want to be leaders and show that just by emphasizing new traits and new qualities, you could easily make the step from manager, where you're usually a skilled person, to a leader where you're more of a visionary and more of an inspiring person.
Okay. So, Chris, let's say you are a leader.
Okay.
You're a born leader. I mean, from the day you've been getting out of the crib, you were giving orders, and no, you were inspiring people
like you,
with your
Scott.
ideas, with your qualities, right? And so on. And when you go into the workplace,
right,
and you have those leadership capabilities and abilities and skills,
yes,
how do you show people that you're a good leader without coming off like, you're full of yourself?
I think the real way to do that is to live by the example that you set. So let's take Abraham Lincoln, for example. He was a great reader. He read all the time. He was knowledgeable what he was talking about. You would love, as Steve Jobs once said, people like to learn from somebody who worked for somebody that they can learn something from. If you're knowledgeable, you start to become a leader by reading and learning. And then what happens is people naturally start to listen to you and respect you more because you know what you're talking about. And a leader is definitely someone who shows that they care and they emphasize empathy, that they are not just there to show if you do something wrong, you're making a mistake and we're going to mess this up. It's something that if they don't know the way, they figure out the way and they help you get to the way.
See, I have a lot of respect for leaders because when a leader, let's say you're having a multiple person conversation.
Yes.
You're talking about the Yankees, whatever, Mets, whatever you're talking about.
Yeah.
And a guy comes over to the conversation that really knows what he's talking about.
Right.
Historically speaking, he knows every manager, every player, every stolen base, every guy ever had, every batting average. All of a sudden, you're almost intimidated by his knowledge.
Right.
And while you might have been espousing and spewing, before he got there, all of a sudden now you're a little bit taking a back seat because you respect that knowledge, that other people have. And leaders don't want to intimidate, but they want to dominate with intelligence.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's kind of what a leader should be, highly intelligent and not just, for show, but more for just showing people this is the knowledge that we need to have. And then when you know more, you naturally lift your team up to know more.
Okay, so you would inspire, if you were a great leader, you would inspire the people that report to you or work with you to be great leaders themselves.
Correct.
By fortifying their knowledge.
Exactly.
And that's just one of the many things.
One of the many things that they could do.
What else can people do?
Oh, people could do definitely a lot of different things. Another thing they could do is lead, most importantly, by example. And the example that they need to set is that if you care about your people then in turn care about others. So you have to show real knowledge and real caring in that example, and just take people who maybe don't feel that they're being cared and show them that you're cared. You don't need to know everything about a person's personal life, but if they're out from work because they're sick, you should know why and what you could do to help them. You can't just let someone go or not want to work with them because they're having a difficult time.
Right.
If you help a person through a difficult time, they become a better employee and a better person.
Right. And leadership skills are also somewhat markedly obvious when you're young.
Right.
Like a lot of people, you could see they sit in the back of the room. They don't want to be called on. They're sort of like, blending into the furniture. They don't want to put forth that effort or that persona that I am a leader. Right. They want to put forth that they are a follower. Right, which is also pretty obvious. If you think back to your days in elementary school and middle school, there were already leaders and followers.
Correct. And there was people who had natural leadership skills that need to hone in on them, and people who are followers who would make good team members. And one thing that's very important for a leader is that they can't lose their sense of leadership at the expense of the environment or what's going on around them. You have to hit hard with strict conviction. You look at the life of George Washington. Nothing came very easy to him in his life. There was a lot of hardship, and to be the first president of a country and be a general is not necessarily something that's very easy. But he had the perseverance to go through and learn from his mistakes and keep going. You could be the most natural leader in the world, but if you're not sitting there going through it and experience it and really moving forward, you're just going to be a C-level leader instead of the A.
All right, so what I just got out of you there was perseverance.
Yes.
Right? That's another great leadership quality.
Exactly.
All right, so you've got to persevere. So there's no quit. Leaders don't quit.
Leaders don't quit. That's exactly right. They keep going until the job's done. But at the same time, if they know something needs to be quitted, they could quit. But if it's something strong enough to believe in, you do it anyway, even if you're worried you might fail.
Right.
Because it's that important.
So they don't have that fear of failure.
No fear of failure whatsoever. They overcome that fear of failure to be able to push through.
Okay. So, all right, what other qualities can we talk about that leaders have? So we've got, historical knowledge, right? We've got the perseverance.
Yep. And another thing that they do is that they use a lot of their natural gifts. Now, we talked about leadership being a natural gift, but a natural gift could also be your ability to write, your ability to work together. And you look at the people who, like Abraham Lincoln, for example, he was a very strong orator. He could speak very well. And when he could speak very well, people would listen. And he used that type of speaking really to bring people to his vision. And that's one good trait that he had as a leader, but that's also using his gift. If you don't necessarily have a gift of speaking or want to, you could also bring people closer to you by other gifts you have, such as writing, or gifts such as being an analyst, or really just someone who could create a product even. Steve Jobs might not have been the best speaker per se, but he was definitely the best vision and the best creator that we know, and he inspired a whole generation of people.
Right. It's too bad he's not around anymore to appreciate it.
It's a shame.
But when you talk about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, there's a story about everything. George Washington had the cherry tree.
Yes.
I cannot tell a lie.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. And then Abraham Lincoln was the guy that, didn't he walk 16 miles to school each day or something like that, round trip?
He walked a lot. He also walked very far just to he found out one person in the town who had a book that he hasn't read. So he walked extremely far to get that book. I mean, we're talking miles. And when he got the book, he ended up bringing it home and he read it, but it got ruined. He felt so bad by it that he studied, that he paid for the book in full, even though the guy said he didn't have to worry about it. Because back then, don't forget, books were a little bit more scarce than they are today. I mean, we're very spoiled in today's world.
Money was scarce.
Money was scarce, yeah.
Cars, there were no cars. There were no nothing,
Well, think about Abraham Lincoln. He grew up extremely poor. I mean, he had nothing. And he was able to overcome all his poverty and all his hardships and become a strong leader. It's almost like what he went through made him the winner he became later in life to lead the country in one of its most turmoil times in history.
Tell us about what Abraham Lincoln had to overcome.
Oh, he had to overcome a lot of poverty. That's the main thing he had to overcome when he was younger. Another thing he had to overcome was definitely the opinions of others. He was in a country that was divided about a very hot topic issue of slavery at the time.
And it's still a hot topic.
Still a very hot topic. And he had to do what was right. And he believed that slavery should be abolished, which is a good thing. And we're glad he had these beliefs. But he had to overcome people in two different sides wanting different things, and even some people in his own party who felt like maybe we should let this house secede. And he had to go overcome all the different opinions, say, you know what, this is right. I'm not going to just appease people. A nation divided against itself cannot stand. And he went through all that.
Let's hear a little bit about Alexander Hamilton. I am one of the few people, I mentioned this to you already, that did not see the Broadway play. You can probably say 95% of people in this region have seen it. So I don't really know that much about him. Wasn't he the guy in the duel?
Yeah, he was in a duel
with Burr.
With Burr, yes, he was in the duel with Burr, and you almost forgot the name for a second. Yeah. But he was in the duel, and he ended up dying. I believe it was in the duel, and he always, one thing about him is that I think one of his biggest strengths, but was also his biggest weakness, was that he would not really back down, and it made him a tremendous leader, and it made him a strong person you would want to follow. But at the same time, it kind of got at the best of him at the end of his life. Yeah,
well, he got gunned down, right? Because he wouldn't back down. So did he know that guy was a better shooter than he?
I don't know if he did, to be honest. But if he did, he probably still would have went into the battle anyway.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So what sort of stuff did Alexander Hamilton have to overcome?
Oh, he had to overcome, he was born the son of a prostitute, and he had to overcome being impoverished. Actually, his fame between him and Lincoln that are very similar is that they were both very poor. All different things. He went to school and he got the people in the town to pay for him to help go to school, to really just raise money. He went to college, and it was at a time when there was not easy to go to college. Like today, let's be honest, we all could take loans and go. Well, the loans are expensive. Maybe you shouldn't go that route.
Right.
That's up to you. But he really went at the time that it was hard. And he was just someone who was highly intelligent and motivated and really was a right-hand man to George Washington when he needed a right-hand man. And Hamilton became that person.
You know, wouldn't it be great, Chris, if we could hear these guys talk?
Oh, I would love to
if
hear
there
them.
was like audio recordings of them and much more information that would be, considered current, that we could look at, videos of him, things like that. When I look at some of the great people from the 20s and the 30s, right, and the Roosevelts, right,
Yes.
for example, there's so little footage,
Right.
of them. I know Theodore Roosevelt giving his great speech.
Yeah.
I remember because somehow that was recorded.
Right.
But prior to him, there was no such thing as audio or video recordings.
Right.
So unfortunately, we don't have any of these things, but we have books that have been written about them that have direct quotes. Is that right?
Yeah, we have books that have direct quotes. In the book, in the beginning of each chapter, I use a quote from their book, just from their lives. Just to organize the book that relates to their leadership quality. But it would be very amazing if we could hear what they speak, know what they sounded like, what their voice was. I think that would be an amazing thing.
Yeah.
No one really make notes about what their voice sounded like, but it would be nice to know.
Yeah, and then when you hear, for example, Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Right? Now, he's been gone a long time, unfortunately, but you still hear his voice.
You can see his body motions,
his body language. I had a dream, the look on his face, the passion,
the conviction.
The conviction. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, powerful stuff. So I can only imagine what Lincoln and Washington and Hamilton had.
They must have been very close to that.
Yeah, and I also admired Ben Franklin a lot because he was also a little bit into science, which appealed to me because I'm a science guy.
Oh, yes.
And with the key, with the electricity, right? Isn't he the guy with the
stove? And he made the stove and everything else. He was a great inventor, and he was somebody who always wanted to learn, and that's one of actually Ben Franklin's biggest traits. He wanted to learn. He always was moving forward. He believed that early to bed, early to wise made a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. And when you look at a quote like that from Ben Franklin, it shows how motivated he was. He didn't just spend all night hanging out at the pub like he could have. Instead, he went and did amazing things.
You don't happen to know the significance of Franklin's Tower, do you?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
because that's the theme song for my radio show.
Really?
Called Franklin's Tower. But I know there's a story behind it, but I don't know what the story is. I thought maybe you might have known.
No, I haven't done Ben Franklin yet, but you know what? You just gave me the idea for the next one, maybe.
Yeah, he's amazing. So let's talk about the book, okay? So first of all, where can people get it?
They're all available exclusively on Amazon. So Amazon is the place to go for all the books.
Did you have a publisher or did you self-publish?
I self-published myself. I went through editors and things. An interesting story about the book is the first time I wrote, the first one in the series is Abraham Lincoln. When I wrote that book for the first time, I sent to an editor who sent it back to me and said that they couldn't work with it because I didn't realize it, but most of the facts about Lincoln online are false. And the person told me they were false and said I needed to make these right. I couldn't publish a book that was false, which is true. So I'm very thankful for this editor because she really helped me with that. So I took the book and had to rewrite it, and then I had to also rewrite it again to make sure that it was up to standards.
Is there? Can you just cover quickly what was false? I mean, was there an obvious thing that was false?
I'm trying to think. I can't remember any quotes off the top of my head, but there was a few that were flagged that they were wrong. I can't really think of any of them right now, but there was a few that were there. And it showed that most of them were, so it had to be changed before I could publish. And so the first book took the longest to write because I didn't know how to research. I had to learn how to research. So I had to make sure the book was well written, and then I did better research and came out with a much more well-written, factual book. Right. And
did you have to buy these books, or you got them from the library, or where'd you get all your research material?
Most of my research material, some was from the library. And also another one was from the internet mostly, but I went to more credible sites that was provided, and I double checked the facts of the site, and I made sure I worked closely with like a works cited person who was able to check. So I wrote chapter by chapter, sent the person, made sure things were more factually correct. That I checked it and they checked, and I got pretty good at fact checking towards the end.
So what other factoids can we talk about with Washington or Hamilton or Abraham Lincoln that you think the audience would enjoy?
Abraham, we talk about these different things, is that a lot of times they talk about like making relationships after you win. So like, for example, when George Washington ended up becoming the first president, he went back to England, and he made sure that we were still allies with them. He didn't want to completely cut them off. He used them for trade. Just because you beat somebody doesn't mean you have to destroy somebody.
Right.
You need to make friends of everybody. And he knew the importance of being friends of England, so he made sure that he had the relationships reestablished. This is why we're probably still friends with them today.
You'd think that people would have learned something from that. Look what's happening in the world today. Is there going to be a friendship between Ukraine and Russia, or a friendship between Israel and Hamas? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the kind of leadership that can deliver that.
You know what? The sad part is I believe you're 100% correct in that statement that we don't have that leadership. But you know what? In turmoil times like this, we might be surprised to see a leader step up and maybe possibly bring peace.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. You're listening to Radio Jobline with Scott Possessor and his old friend Christopher Coopersmith, author of The Magic of an Influencer. That's a series.
Yes.
And they can get it on Amazon. Very interesting historical perspective of where these leaders are getting their leadership skills from. What was the most powerful book you read?
Oh, the one that I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I think it's Man or Mankind's Search for Meaning. I can't remember right now, but it's probably one of the best books I ever read. It literally changed my life, what he did and what he went through. If you don't know the story, he was a man who went through a concentration camp during World War II, but he didn't have to. He had a full ride back to the United States, but he stayed back to be with his parents, and he ended up writing this book about man's search for meaning, and it was amazing.
Wow. All right. Very interesting. Are you listening to Radio Jobline? We have Christopher Coopersmith here. If you're interested in his book, he's the author of The Magic of an Influencer. It's available on Amazon, and we'll talk about all three of the parts of the book when we get back. If you have an idea and would like to be on Radio Jobline, you can write to me, Scott P. 118 @gmail.com. Happy to have you or your idea on the show. And also, you should connect with me on LinkedIn, because if you miss a broadcast here on LI News Radio, we do post all of Radio Joblines on my LinkedIn page. So it's PASSESER. The song you're hearing in the background, Chris, is called Franklin's Tower. So let's get to the bottom of that as well. We'll be right back after this break, folks.
Roll away the dew. Roll away the dew.
And now, welcome back to Radio Jobline with your host, Scott Possessor, right here on LI News Radio.
Welcome, everybody. It must be, it's already between 2 and 3 p.m. or between 9 and 10 p.m. on Saturday or Wednesday. We're here to talk about your career, talk about various aspects of the workforce, job markets, talent pools, the economy. I broke news last week. We're not having a recession. It's behind us. My economist says so, and I trust him. I've had him on the show 12 times over the last 3 years, so you can take that to the bank. Today we're talking about leadership, and not with our normal cast of characters, like Vistage International, Mr. Jeff Oak, who joins us all the time, but we're talking with an old friend who really has done an amazing job using historical perspective to discuss leadership. And wow, what a really great idea. And he focuses on Abraham Lincoln, on George Washington, and Alexander Hamilton. And we're going to find out a little bit more about those three in this segment. And this is all part of his book series, which is called The Magic of Influencer series, right? Yep. Or just The Magic of Influencer?
The Magic of an Influencer.
Of an Influencer?
Correct.
Okay. And it's written by Chris Coopersmith. It's available on Amazon. And again, it looks at leadership through the eyes of Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, with three guys that fascinate me. Yeah. So let's take it book by book. There are 3 books,
correct,
in this segment. Should we start with Abraham Lincoln, or who we're starting with?
Let's go with that, Abraham Lincoln.
All right, let's start with Abraham Lincoln.
All right, so Abraham Lincoln, what he was able to do was to obviously lead the country in a very tumultuous time of history. Mm-hmm. A lot of what he did was he confronted things that he felt was wrong, and he thought the issue with slavery was wrong, and he really emphasized that in everything he did. He one time was at a political rally, and someone came and messed up with one of the people who were there supporting him. Now, Abraham Lincoln did not back down from a bully. I mean, he confronted all bullies. He went right up to that bully or went up to anybody. And he was also a wrestler. He trained at the time, which was collar and elbow, which I would assume is very similar to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of today.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. He was just generally a tough guy.
I guess so.
He
And I imagine George Washington was too.
Washington was as well.
Yeah, but go ahead, keep going with Abraham.
Yeah, no worries. So what he did was he went and he confronted this person, and they got into an altercation, and he made sure that the person realized that he can't bully this other person, and he took back control of the crowd. So he was able to really just get control of everybody and stand up for what he believed in, and it was really just completely remarkable.
So you wouldn't want to heckle Abraham Lincoln?
I honestly would not fight Abraham Lincoln if he was in front of me. If I was a 10th degree black belt, I wouldn't fight him. I mean, he was one tough dude.
That's amazing to hear. And I guess, when you grow up poor,
Yeah.
and you grow up living, miles and miles from a school,
Right.
or miles and miles from a town or a book.
Right.
Your life is so difficult, Chris,
Yeah.
that you develop calluses.
Yeah.
You develop strengths that other people don't develop because they don't need it.
Correct. And he really developed these traits just by living his day-to-day life, having to do that. He went and studied for the lawyer exam. He passed the bar at a time when you didn't have to go to school to be a lawyer. This is back when you just had the bar exam.
Right.
So he passed back then, and he just studied, and he honestly was just a very motivated individual. And what I also find amazing about his motivation is that he was motivation at a time where he didn't have easy resources to anything, whether it be books, there was no internet. Today, we have so much access to everything, but it feels like motivation is lacking.
Yeah.
Where back then, motivation was high, but resources were lacking.
So true. So true. Imagine living back then. You couldn't even get a decent pair of glasses.
You're right. I mean, they were expensive.
If like someone like myself who has glaucoma, I would have been considered blind. They would have left me in a room somewhere in an asylum. Seriously, when you can't see,
right.
you can't see. So I imagine people with disabilities were really horribly treated back then.
Yeah, I obviously I'm not too reversed on how they were treated, but I would assume that back then there was no resources to really take care of them.
Yeah,
which is why they probably had those old sad insane asylums. Luckily, we don't have those anymore.
Right. So you had to be strong.
Yeah, you had to be strong,
and you had to be resolute.
Resolute. Yep.
And you had to be intelligent.
Yes.
And then how did then all of these qualities manifest themselves in the successful adventure he had with politics?
Honestly, I think it was just his life journey from overcoming poverty, from having to speak. And when you're motivated to do something, you find a way no matter what. I forgot who said that quote, but someone said that quote. And the truth is that he was so motivated to stand up for what was right. He confronted people where maybe he could have lost the match that he fought with the guy who was a bully, but or he could have fought that lost his fight with slavery. At the end, it cost him his life. I mean, he was assassinated. But he went forward knowing that there was consequences. He was a smart man, so he had to have been aware of what the consequences of what he would do and could lead.
So John Wilkes Booth.
Yes.
Right. So he was assassinated, you think, because he got rid of slavery?
I forget what the exact reason was, if it was documented, to be honest. But with John Wilkes Booth is that when he assassinated Lincoln, who knows what the exact motive was or what he was really going through at the time. But unfortunately, it was probably a mixture of everything. Maybe it was because they wanted to have more independence in the South, or maybe it was just he wanted attention. But either way, at the end of the day, it was a sad thing to happen.
Yeah, or just some jealous creep. You never know what's motivating these crazy people. The guy that assassinated John Lennon. People still don't know why he did that.
Yeah, he was
Hinckley, right?
Yeah, I don't remember. I think it was Hinckley. You're right. Yeah, but he was just someone who was just obsessed with him and jealous and everything else. And I guess that's one of the sad parts of fame, is that in some ways you do put your life on the line. But you know what? If you believe in something strong enough, just use them as an example and push forward anyway.
Yeah, and if you think about so many great people that were assassinated, Bobby Kennedy and JFK and Martin Luther King, and you can go on and on.
If we go into the JFK one, we could be here all day because there's 1,000 theories on that one.
Right. The second shooter. But anyway, so okay, Lincoln, a tough guy, a smart guy, a motivated guy, a guy who overcame objections. Okay,
Yes.
And then he got into the political arena.
Yes.
And he used all of that. And tell us how that worked for him.
Really, when he got into the political arena, he used his determination to keep going. He failed a lot of the time. A lot of the time, he just got a lot of pushback. He didn't win every office he went for.
Right.
But he kept going. And I think the biggest thing about him is that no matter what happened, he kept forward. You know, he was someone who history recorded as maybe being depressed because he would stare at the fire for long periods of time. He didn't have a lot of, maybe good things that always happened to him. But at the same time, despite everything going around, he just kept going despite how he was feeling or what was going on. And also at a time, too, where water was not as accessible as going to a sink. So I'd assume at some point he had to go out and get water during his political matches, and political fighting. So he also might have gone with thirst and hunger and other things just to move forward.
Right. So he put up with it so much.
He did. He put up with a lot, but you know what? Honestly, we could all be very thankful that he did. The world is a much better place because he lived.
That's right. Well done. And, we don't talk about politics on this show.
Yes.
Because they don't talk about politics unless it's right wing or left wing.
Right.
We don't talk about politics. And you know why?
Why?
Because the minute you take a side, you lose half your audience. The world is divided.
Right.
So if you say you're a Trump guy, well, then all the Democrats hate you. And if you say you're a Democrat guy, well, all the Trump people hate you.
Yeah.
So there's no way around that. It's horrible the way the country has become so polarized. But I think even both sides of the aisle would admit that what I just said was true.
100%. And at the time that Abraham Lincoln did this, he knew what the consequences was, but he went forward despite what was going on. And I think also at the time that what he did, there was people who might have believed that he was wrong, but he believed he was right. He knew he was right, and he just went forward.
All right. So he changed the nation.
He changed the nation for the better.
Right. So basically, how much better can you do than that, right? And he died. His thanks was getting assassinated. All right. That happens to the greats.
It's unfortunate, but yeah.
Okay. So let's dive into a little bit more of George Washington. Now, again, everybody knows the story of the cherry tree. I cannot tell a lie. Obviously, the guy could use an axe. And he must have been another tough guy.
Oh, he was extremely tough. I mean, one of the things that I find interesting about Washington is how he was able to check his circle. He was somebody who always had the right people around him, whether it be Hamilton, whether it be his wife and generals. He went around to the people who he knew he could trust, and he really checked his circle. And I think that was one of the key attributes to his leadership. He was such a friendly, honest guy that they trusted him to lead the nation. They trusted him to help form in Philadelphia the Constitution, everything else. He just had a level of trust. And
how did he earn that trust?
Just his character. I mean, when you look at it's his character. It's who he was. It's what he amplified as a leader. It's just you listen, you've been in business for many years. You would know someone who's not honest. You know who to trust at your job, right? You know who you can trust. So there's no lying about who you can and can't trust. You could deceive someone for a moment, but you can't fool them for a lifetime.
Now, what was so monumental about the cherry tree thing, where was it that he couldn't tell a lie? Was that the message?
I think the message was mostly that he couldn't tell a lie, and I know it's one of the most popular stories.
You're talking about earning trust. We're talking about earning trust. So if you have a person who is self-proclaimed cannot tell a lie, and also by actions never lies,
just like Abraham Lincoln was Honest Abe. They refused to lie. Lying is a big thing in our society today. A lot of people do it, but something, if you really want to gain respect and move something, you can't tell a lie. I heard a quote one time that if you never tell a lie, you have nothing to remember.
That's right. And the other way, Quintilius said, a great liar must have a great memory.
Right.
And if you do not have a great memory and you lie, you're going to get caught somewhere down the line. And then your credibility goes way down in honesty. So I think another takeaway from the qualities that of these people had was honesty.
Honesty. Oh, yeah. They were extremely honest people. They would stand up for the truth, even if it cost them their lives, but they'd rather stand up for what they believe in and be honest about their beliefs rather than succumb to something that they felt was wrong.
So you know any more about the cherry tree story? Whose cherry tree was it?
Oh, the cherry tree was, the story of the cherry tree really goes down to...
You don't remember exactly. It must have been a very monumental, cornerstone of his life. If that quote, could gain so much traction. And like even today when I'm joking around with my wife or something, I'll say I cannot tell a lie.
Right.
I ate the cake.
Yes.
Things like that. So people today are still using that expression, and I just wondered if there was more to it. But I'm sure there were many examples of his integrity, that allowed him to earn the trust of the American people.
Yeah, this story has endured for over 200 years for a reason, and the reason it's endured so much is because of who he was as a person.
Yeah. All right. So then, how did all of his wonderful qualities then manifest when he hit the political arena?
When he hit the political arena, he was able to captivate high-quality people to follow him, and he was able to delegate tasks that were necessary. His wife managed his estate and helped with foreign affairs. Martha, yep, his wife Martha. Right. And you look at, he had imagined trust for her, a strong relationship with her, and it spewed out to everyone else because he was able to captivate leaders to be the leader of the leaders, kind of speak. That's actually a good way to say it, leader of the leaders.
Right. So like many of today's great people, he surrounded himself with great people.
Exactly.
You don't surround yourself with yes men.
Yes.
Right? You surround yourself with people that will challenge you, who are great themselves.
Right. Yep. And that's 100% right. You can't just be around people who agree with you. I think that's one of the things that we could go into Hamilton with that one, because Hamilton was someone who encouraged different opinions and someone who wanted to hear what other people wanted to say.
Right.
He heard a lot of different opinions. Unfortunately, it cost him to have that huge feud with Jefferson. That's well known. That he.
Yeah. Tell us about that. I don't remember that.
Yeah. So the feud with Jefferson was. Jefferson was a Federalist, and he was Federalist. He was a Republican, and when they were going out of the difference in opinions, it just kind of spewed over, and they kept going all for each other and arguing with each other, and it was something that was really just causing a lot of back and forth amongst each other.
Okay.
And it was something that really probably gave George Washington a headache at the time. Okay,
so let's see how this whole Burr thing happened. Like where did it start, and was it connected? And well, we know how it ended, but tell us what you can.
So the Burr feud really started when they were both in the political arena. They were both having a different talk to each other and different opinions. And I think what happened is that you have two strong-minded individuals going with each other and just arguing with each other. And that's never a recipe for success. When someone's too strong of an opinion. It was really just a bitter rivalry that happened over the years between both of the men. Burr ended up shooting Hamilton in the abdomen, and that ended up ending Hamilton's life. It would be nice if Hamilton never had that feud, but he did.
Right. Yeah. So the question is, though, some people might question this aspect of Hamilton's personality, because violence is never the answer.
Right.
And they chose a violent path to quell the argument.
Exactly. And back then, dueling was a way for people to prove their manhood. And, Hamilton came from a place where he had to prove his manhood many, many times. So he was eager to prove it again. He was very upset when Burr won his first political seat. He didn't want that to happen. And that's kind of where a lot of the fighting started. But when you go back to that, it seems that there were two men just fighting and wanting to prove that the other one was tougher.
And what happened with Burr then? So he wins this, and then what? Well,
he didn't do anything wrong by the laws back then, because technically dueling, actually I'm not too sure exactly if dueling was 100% legal, but it was definitely something that wasn't.
Well, it's modern day self-defense.
Yeah, modern day self-defense. I mean, they fought each other. But that's generally what really happened to Burr after. He just kind of went and did his thing and kept going, and Hamilton was left outside the country, left dead forever.
Right. All right. So, but I still say that's not a solution.
Correct. We can't sit there and literally fight someone to the death. I mean, we're not in gladiator times, and back then they were even becoming more modernized.
Right.
It's when you fight someone to the death, you also assume that you're right.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you might have been wrong, and maybe Hamilton was wrong. Who knows? But at the end of the day, you have to be able to sit there and have a civil discussion like we're having about everything. Right.
Okay. So we've talked about all three of them. We have a few minutes late. Just give us some thoughts on what great leaders do. Like even in the notes you have becoming a great leader requires a desire to learn more, which we've covered.
Yeah.
Study the greats and modify when necessary, which is
Correct.
great. And what do you mean by modify when necessary?
So to be a great leader, you can't keep doing things the same way. I mean, think about if you were still reaching your recruiting candidates by letter instead of email. Probably wouldn't be working so well.
Right.
Really what you need to do is modify what you're doing and change based on what the people expect, like how the people are reacting to it, and based on how circumstances are changing around you. So if you see someone at the work becoming toxic or things going differently, you have to adjust to be able to manage it effectively.
Why is leadership hard for some people?
It's hard because we live in a society that glorifies the Wolf of Wall Street. They glorify people who do the wrong thing and get heavy rewards for it. So a leader is someone who doesn't necessarily do the wrong things. The Wolf of Wall Street guy wasn't a leader. He just did illegal things. And you have to navigate what people think is cool versus what you know is right.
Right. Yeah, I think about all the attention paid to the gangsters of the 40s and the 50s, right? And the 30s and the 40s. And you think about all the press they got.
Yes.
And all the Bonnie and Clyde.
Yes.
And the Untouchables, and all the people that got all this recognition more for doing the wrong things.
Right, exactly. And it's not right that they got all this recognition more than people who actually did the right thing. More people, the news captivates more people who commit robberies than people who actually go out and help the community.
Okay, so your credo is lead with strength, respect, and empathy.
Yep, lead with leadership, strength, respect, empathy.
Cover all three of those.
So when you lead with strength, what you're doing is that you're leading from a position where you don't sit there and just back down, but you also lead in a place where you know that you're right, but you're not being pig-headed, but at the same time, you're being loving, like a child correcting their father. I'm sorry, a child correcting their father, repeat that. A father correcting their child is a loving father leads with strength by correcting and being assertive, but at the same time, they're not allowing inappropriate behavior to move forward.
Okay, so that's strength. How about respect?
Respect is earned by not...
Aretha Franklin.
Exactly.
Right.
Respect, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Is earned by not telling a lie, not doing what you're not supposed to do, just doing what you are supposed to do, and really just showing up and caring and being there for everybody else.
Okay.
Which leads to empathy.
Right.
Which is you show empathy by you don't just care about the work they do, you care about the person. And everyone who's had a leader who cared about them, trained them, and did what was right by them they'll respect the leader, and they will want to work with the leader and then do 10 times more output than someone who doesn't.
Interesting. All right. Now, Chris, people may want to reach out to you that have heard you on the radio today. Do you have an email address or a website or someplace we can send people?
Yes. You could go to ChristopherCoopersmith.com. That is my website. It's just my full name. And you could just send a contact through there.
Okay, and I'm sure you're on.
I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, Christopher Coopersmith. We can't forget that name.
Not at all.
And the name of the book one more time and where to get it.
So the book is there's How to Lead Like Alexander Hamilton, How to Lead Like George Washington, and How to Lead Like Abraham Lincoln, and they're all on Amazon. Every single one of them.
All right, fantastic. All right, now you have any more in the works? Are you thinking of writing maybe some more modern day people?
We do. I was going to work on one for Princess Diana. That's going to be the next one.
Wow.
We're working on that right now. I'm going through the chapters and putting it together and looking at formatting and other things. So
she's great because people love her.
She's an amazing
people
person.
will buy anything that has her in it, So I think that's a great choice, a fabulous choice. Chris, I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Best of luck to you and your family, your baby, your books, everything. Thanks so much for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Scott. This was really a pleasure. This is a beautiful place to be.
All right. Well, we're happy to have you. You've been listening to Radio Jobline with Scott Possessor. Maybe you have an idea or a book like Chris Coopersmith did. You can write to me, scottp118@gmail.com. That's scottp118@gmail.com. Write to me. Let me know what you want to talk about, and maybe you can be on the radio program. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn because we post all of the Radio Joblines on my LinkedIn page. So connect with me. Have a great week, everybody. Happy hunting.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.